Good morning. I'm Tim Sheehy, President of the Metropolitan Milwaukee Association of Commerce, and welcome to another edition of the Business of Greater Milwaukee. BGM is a monthly webinar providing insights on the business of Greater Milwaukee. This series puts a spotlight on the challenges and opportunities we face in sustaining and growing the region's prosperity. We hope these insights will help you shape your business and inspire you to help shape the region. Today, we're grateful to have three MMAC board members with us to discuss the challenges and opportunities in starting and growing a business in Metro Milwaukee. And they bring a unique perspective as African-American business owners and founders. Joining us today are Carla Cross, President and CEO of Cross Management Services, James Phelps, President and CEO of JCP Construction, and Ugo Nwagbaraocha, President of Diamond Discs International. And following our discussion with Carla, James, and Ugo, we'll be joined again by Dr. John Raymond, President of the Medical College of Wisconsin, for an update on the latest information surrounding COVID and the vaccine rollout. And again, as the program goes on and you have questions, please put them in the chat box. But first, a word from our sponsor. Today's program is sponsored by United Healthcare. In times like these, a traditional health plan may not be the best fit for your business. So take a closer look at All Savers alternate funding from United Healthcare. MMAC has partnered with United Healthcare to offer coverage for groups of 5 to 99 employees. Now small businesses can take advantage of benefits typically reserved for larger companies. So join the 170 companies with 5,500 insured who have engaged in this programming. Underwriting for more competitive pricing, better data so your business understands where your premium dollars are going, and the potential for a surplus refund if claims are lower than expected. So contact your MMAC broker or visit uhc.com/MMAC to learn more. And as a reminder, tomorrow, Peter Zion, a geopolitical strategist and best-selling author, will help analyze the complexities of the global economy in a post-2020 world, as well as the geopolitical risks and opportunities that lie ahead. So listen in and ask questions by registering at mmac.org/calendar. And then finally, on March 17th, please join us for a webinar to answer your questions about COVID-19 vaccines and how the rollout affects your business and your employees. We'll have experts from the Medical College of Wisconsin, public health officials, and a legal expert to take your questions at this virtual event. And again, you can register at mmac.org. So let's begin our conversation with Carla, Ugo, and James. You know, to achieve a goal of sustaining and growing Metro Milwaukee as a top 25 US metro, measured by per capita income, we need a healthy environment to start and grow businesses. And starting and growing a business anywhere is a challenging endeavor. Far more entrepreneurs fail than succeed. 20% of business starts in the US fail in their first 2 years, 45% in the first 5, and 65% in the first 10. And only 25% last 15 years. So congratulations, Carlo, Ugo, and James. Those are some tough numbers to run up against. So let's explore what lessons you've learned and how we can improve as a regional home for diverse businesses. So as we start the conversation, I'm going to ask Carla, Ugo, and James just to start off by telling us a little bit about yourselves, your companies, and how you got where you got to today. So Carla, I'll start with you and then we'll jump to Ugo and James.
Thank you, Tim. I'm glad you invited me, or I appreciate you inviting me to participate in this webinar. I started Cross Management Services 21 years ago, and because it's a consulting firm, I didn't need a lot of capital to get started. But I did have some really good relationships that I've built with developers throughout my years working for the city of Milwaukee, and also from relationships I built when I worked for the Next Door Foundation. I think my background is accounting, so the financial part and organization of putting a business together, I had strong skills in that method, in that discipline. So what I really needed to do is really just meet other developers, grow my business, hire really good, capable staff, and then also provide them with career aspirations so they can grow and thrive and really help the business grow. So I think those are some of the things that have been successful for me over the 21 years that I've been in business. Luckily, I've been able to survive the recession, the Great Recession. It just required you minimizing your expenses. And luckily, we had long-term projects. We were working on Lambeau Field at the time, and Barry Mandel started the North End project. So those are projects that help us sort of go through the whole recession. So I think the one thing to survive is when challenges happen, figure out how you can reduce costs. You know, you have really good clients and business and revenue continue to come in, and then you can see your way through. And always just be inventive, always finding new ways or new products that you can supply to make sure your business can be successful.
Thanks, Carla. Ugo, I can see that not even COVID gets you out of a tie.
As one business owner once told me, it's my uniform. Everybody has a uniform, so it's my uniform. And I obviously want to say thank you, Tim. Thank you, MMAC, for putting this together. I think it's a much needed, very important discussion to have. I want to thank my esteemed colleagues. I want to say that I'm colleagues and panelists, that I'm also on the panel with Ms. Carla Cross and Mr. James Phelps. And it's amazing because I just, going back when I took ownership of the company in 2007. So I've been in the construction tooling industry for 26 years. I was the director of sales of this organization for several years, and I had the opportunity to purchase the company that I worked for, which at the time I had no idea, how do you buy an almost $1 million company? So I was very fortunate to reach out to the Greater Milwaukee Committee. Actually, I was very fortunate that I had a good consultant who forced me to reach out to the Greater Milwaukee Committee. And at the time, they had an initiative for a competitive Milwaukee. And after vetting me for a strenuous vetting process, they made some introductions. They made to some banks. So I'll back up by saying to me as a business owner, one thing that made the process very easy for us acquiring the business was knowing the value that you have to the industry, knowing the value that you have as a business owner, having a very, whether it's a written business plan or just having inherently knowing, the structure of the business plan of how your business is profitable and so forth. So I say that to say it made the conversations with the banks very easy, because there was no question that a bank could ask that I didn't know the answer for. But at the time, I didn't realize the significance of having a referral or an introduction to the bank. So one thing I'll tell new business owners or startups, never just walk into a bank. Either know somebody that has a relationship with that bank, is doing business at that bank, that can refer you there, because it's a much different conversation. But I remember the first person I called didn't answer the phone. The second person I called picked up, and within a couple months, we closed on a $500,000 SBA loan to start the business. And after the business started growing and we won some awards, I remember I'd bump into the first banker that didn't answer the phone, and he would say, "Hey, we need to do some business." And I said, "You should have answered your phone." So that was, so that part was, that was how we gained the capital to start the business. But I think the expansion of the business became the difficult part after 10 years of business ownership. That's where, you started seeing a totally different, to me, a totally different response. But Diamond Disc International, we're a national industry leading wholesaler of construction tooling and equipment, power tools, gas saws, and safety equipment.
Great. James, you got a little different route, kind of a family start. So talk a little bit about that.
Sure, love to. Hi, James Phelps, JCP Construction. Family-based business that I own with my two brothers. And the inflection point came when we were working on a project, which we did moonlighting, doing rehabs and doing rental property. So we naively said, hey, it'd be nice if we could just work for ourselves, not to worry about going to work the next day. Little did we know that you probably put in like 50% more hours than you do when you work with someone else. But that's what started the conversation. And then in 2008, we actually took that step. Obviously, that's when the economy was going down. But we thought it was going to be since it was so aggressive going down, we thought it was going to be a V coming back up again. Didn't quite work out like that. But what it did do is show us how to be lean and mean. We started the business with a small personal loan along with our 401ks, and then leveraged that with a line of credit that was basically a collateral of our CDs against that. So it gave us a good start, along with just relationships that we had. And as Ugo mentioned as well, the difficult part came as we wanted to grow and having those conversations with the banks, which took a little while before we finally found true partners that allowed us to not just grow, we'll call it organically, is based off of the cash flow, but be able to actually put a little more emphasis and a little bit more concentration on the capital side in order to kind of grow a little bit smarter like we wanted to.
James, let me start with you and run back around the horn here. And think about this. I look at the three of you as kind of role models. And when you think about what you've been able to do, talk about the lessons that you've learned that you would tell a younger version of yourself. So what are one or two things that you would tell a younger version of yourself for people that are considering kind of going down the path that you three have gone down?
I would say that as thinking about a younger version of myself, I think that be careful who you listen to. Obviously, follow your dream. Make sure that you are getting counsel from people who have been down that road. And not to say not to listen to those who have not put skin in the game as far as being entrepreneurs, but I would probably weigh that a little bit less than those who actually have put skin in the game and have fought the battles needed to be a small business owner. So that would be one, which is just keeping good people around you that are going to give you good information and not just either be naysayers or at the other end of the spectrum, just kind of tell you be yes people, but people who are actually give you good, solid advice, whether it's what you want to hear or not, but it's what you need to hear.
How about you, Ugo?
No, ditto. I mean, I think James was spot on. That's as my consultant once said, find people who are vested in your success, vested in seeing you be successful. And one thing I would always say is, if you've never signed the front of a paycheck, there's little that you can say regarding, the journey, and that's when I look at these panelists, I smile because I look at, the journey that we all journey, through, so to me, it's really important to make sure that you have people that are vested in your success. Also, make sure that, as James mentioned, sometimes the people have good intentions, but because they've never seen excellence. So, don't let someone's ignorance on either side, any side of the table, don't let someone's ignorance to Black excellence hinder your ability to achieve Black success or Black excellence, and don't let anyone define or put you in a hole as far as what the limitations for your success can be, because you otherwise, it limits to what you can achieve. So, my goal now is to change the perception of what Black business ownership looks like in Milwaukee. And it's been amazing, just the type of reactions that you have across the table from where people never envisioned a Black business owner being successful and having that. So yeah, I definitely want to just kind of piggyback off James Phelps' statement.
Great. Carla.
I probably would tell my younger self to dream bigger. And then also, sometimes I think I should have spent a little bit more time in corporate America, working for major corporations to see just how they do things, just information on managing human resources, all the other information that a large corporation usually has in place. So I think that's pretty much what I would tell my younger self. I did have really good advisors. My dad and all his brothers were business owners. My older sister was a business owner. So those were people that I could go to not only for advice, but also for capital when I needed it. But I think that's the main thing, is to dream bigger. My son, I'm hoping he's going to take over the business, and it's his goal to take it to where I did not. So, but he is in corporate America and spending a lot of time learning about mergers and acquisitions. And so I think he'll bring that expertise to really grow the business in the future.
Yeah, thank you. I want to share some statistics information that the three of you are very familiar with, because we talked about it at our board. And then I've got a question for each of you. So if you look at Metro Milwaukee, there are about 25,000 businesses in the region that are identifiable by ownership race. So 95% of those businesses are white owned versus a population in the region that's 66% white. 3% are African American owned against a population that's 16% African American, and 2% are Hispanic or Latino owned against a population that's 11%. So I want to ask kind of each of you, based on your experiences, what unique challenges have you faced as African American business owners? And again, James, maybe I'll start with you, and then Carla, and then Ugo.
Sure. I would say there's going to be a lack of capital, which I think is going to be across the board for any upstart business, for most upstart businesses. Mm-hmm. But in addition to that, I think, as Ugo kind of hinted on, there's a perception about what minority-owned businesses do or are capable of. And sometimes I feel it's an upstream battle just to get to par with your white counterparts, just by proving what you're able to do. So I think that there's work to be done that way. I also think that there's just the opportunities are few and far between. I like to point out that it's actually pretty cool having both Carla as well as Ugo as panelists on here, because I think it needs to be said that our first project was Carla. She believed in us when we first started. It was a small project, but it was our first project for one of her, doing some repairs, one of her condo projects that she had. So I just wanted to point that out. There's like, I always think of you as like big sister or auntie, as far as being able to give us that, that first project to be able to go that was outside of the stuff that we had already had in the backlog when we started. And then with Ugo, whereas there was opportunity that was something that we kind of weren't taking full advantage of, and he wanted to make sure that we understood what our opportunity or advantage was, and him reaching out. I say that to say it's peers that help each other and kind of support each other in their endeavors. And I think that there needs to be more of that. I think that that's something that for some reason I would think Milwaukee as a whole, and I think it holds true when we get to diverse businesses where there's these silos where everyone's working not necessarily in unison with one another as much as possible. Not saying everyone's homogenous, but there's to be efforts that are made for everyone to be working together. And that doesn't happen, I would say, as a business community as a whole. And that same holds true, I think, in diverse businesses as well.
What unique barriers have you seen, Carla?
I think Milwaukee as a whole, being such an industrial city, I don't know if there's a history of entrepreneurship within the city. And I think that so many young people may not have been exposed to people in business, so they can see that as a career option. So I think the more that we can do to expose young individuals to the fact that there are business people in Milwaukee, that you can own a different type of business, even a manufacturing business, a sales business, a construction business, that there are those opportunities out there for them. I think that will help quite a bit. That's, I think, one of the major barriers. I think for me, the reason I can be successful in a business and help other people out is because when we were growing up, our whole family worked together. So just the idea of helping others out and helping them grow and be successful is just in my DNA. So I always try to do that. And so that's why my business as a consulting business, coordinating supply and workforce diversity on construction projects, I think is sort of successful, is because it's all about helping others and making sure they're successful. And I think more young people need to see that. If you can see yourself in that position, you can believe you can achieve it. So I don't know if enough children of color are exposed to all the different, not only jobs, but also opportunities. And then from any opportunity, as long as you can dream, and also believing that you can dream and make your dreams come true. So I think that will help more people of color decide to make the leap to go into business.
Ugo, your thoughts on some unique challenges?
Definitely, and I'd be remiss. I can't talk about the humble amount of success that I've achieved without mentioning my biggest role model, my biggest inspiration, which was my father, Dr. Victor Nwagbaraocha, who came to this country almost 60-some years ago from Nigeria, and with the drive, to eventually get his master's degree and his PhD in education, and from Marquette University, and having my mom come over, raise a family of 4, and also just starting so many organizations, Christian prayer groups and Nigerian organizations that are now second generation, third generation of, leaders, educators, business owners, lawyers, judges, you name it. So why do I mention that? To me, that was true success, not only being able to raise a family, but impacting so many other people's lives. And even when he passed away 10 years ago, there were so many people that said, hey, he was like my father too. So why do I mention that? That was my drive. I didn't know how I was going to be successful with it, but I said to myself, if my father could accomplish all that, I've got no excuse. And that drove me. So now we fast forward and we look at Milwaukee, and I think you alluded to it, looking at the numbers. We can't have this honest discussion without talking about, obviously, the historical impacts. You look at Milwaukee, unfortunately, being last, and anything related to African Americans, Black-owned businesses, place to raise a family, place to raise a business. When you look at the statistics, you look at the numbers, you look at, the average median income for an African American household being, I think, 28 or 27,000, and white counterparts being 65,000. And then a number that really jumps out to me is going to be home ownership, where home ownership rate for African Americans is, I think, 27 or 28%, the last data that I got. And the white counterparts being, 60, I think 65% of the last numbers I saw. So sorry about all the numbers, but Tim, you got to blame yourself for that. I learned that from you over the Tim, is always lead with the facts, and that's lead with the stats. So why do I say that? It's tough to own your own business if you don't own your own house, so when you look at those historical numbers, I remember my father, marching with Father Grappi, or hearing stories about him marching with Father Grappi about redlining and people couldn't buy homes in certain areas. All these things have an impact when you talk about business ownership. So the unique challenges that I see, and as James mentioned earlier, that happens, we're fortunate to be able to use the equity in our home and SBA loan to buy the business. But then even as we were vetted, even as we proved ourselves, it was amazing that only certain organizations would give us true opportunities to compete, to actually to supply products and or services. So when you look at those to me, the three big tiers as far as challenges, first of all, it's going to be access to opportunities. And when I say access to opportunities, access to procurement opportunities, access to opportunities, visibility. What's coming down the road? If you're Northwestern Mutual or Johnson Controls or WC Energy Group, having visibility to say, hey, these are going to be the major procurement opportunities that we have coming up, and we welcome you to participate. So one of the best pieces of advice that I have that I was given as a new business owner was someone told me to meet with Adonica Randall, who was a business owner, fellow MMAC, fellow business council member. And she gave me 2 pieces of advice. Go to the WC Energy Group Supplier Diversity Symposium, which I said, I'm not doing anything in the energy space. I don't do anything with electricity. Why should I go there? And then she also told me to join the business council, MMAC. And I thought that was a waste of my time too. So now you fast forward, and our 90% of our top 20 clients are related through either WC Energy Group or similar utility construction firms all across the nation that do similar work. But I would have never gotten to that industry if I didn't go into the WC Energy Group symposium. And then obviously I'm also chairman of the business council and a board member of MMAC. So that was a great lunch that I had with Adonica, back in 2007. She gave me great advice. But so the first tier, obviously looking at access to opportunities. The second is, as James mentioned earlier, access to capital, access to financial resources. And I'll take a deeper dive in that. When I say resources, also the financial literacy that goes along with it. Having access to CPA, access to business development. And then last but not least, which is where I'm really at in this stage of our careers, is how do we leave this Milwaukee a better place for my children, for our children, for the next generation. And you look at wealth generation, you look at opportunities to invest. And that's one thing that I see where I'm really becoming very intimately aware, especially through this pandemic, where there are limited accesses, limited opportunities for diverse owned businesses to make true long-term investment wealth creation opportunities. And these things are things that if we're a non-minority owned firms, it's connecting the dots. You've got an established firm, demonstrated strength in an area industry. We should be having conversations about how we can collaborate, how we can also do bigger things that are investment opportunities. And you see for non-minority owned firms where these dots are connected with blazing speed and laser-like precision. But for us, as one of the benefits, I think, for diverse owned firms through this pandemic is the fact that we're used to dealing with adversity, right? We're used to dealing with twice, 3 times, 4 times, 5 times the amount of no's as our counterparts. So, that to me is one thing that when this pandemic hit, it was more adversity. And you also saw a lot of business owners who weren't used to that adversity. And even though it disproportionately impacted diverse owned businesses, 40%, I think, of African-American owned businesses have closed their doors, maybe not open back up again, because of the historically lack of access to resources and so forth. But I think the one small shining light is the fact that we're used to adversity. And I think that's really one thing that's allowed us to really push and kind of hammer through. So to summarize, just those 3 areas: access to opportunity, access to resources. And to me right now, the big thing that I'm really looking at is access to long-term investment wealth creation. To me, I want to be able to have my grandkids drive us around and say, "Hey, Dad, look," or "Hey, Granddad, look at this big construction site that JCP Construction is doing over here. Look at this big development," and I'll tell them, "Hey, well, that's I remember when," and that to me is one thing that when you look at, as Carla mentioned earlier, when I became a business owner, there were a few people that we could look to. Growing up in Milwaukee, I didn't see that many Black business owners, that much Black business success. So I think being able to see, wealth creation from Black business owners is something that we definitely need to focus on.
Yeah. So James and Carla, let me ask you the question. What can the broader business community do to help?
I think that there's a couple of different things. I think some of that is reaching out to diverse chambers, right? Like the Business Council, and just find out what other businesses are out there that you can add to your supply diversity chain, right? Whether that's personal or, business as well as personal. I think that's one way, because it all starts with each person, right? In order to understanding what opportunities are available for them to be able to move the needle a little bit more. To me, that kind of stands out, along with just opening doors to relationships, to others that you see around you, so that they can maximize and learn from those relationships. Because as has been mentioned a couple of times, it's about who you know, essentially. That plays a large part of it. And lastly, I would say just mentorship, right? Just understanding or identifying people that you see that have that potential, that are in the industry, or that just show potential that you vibe with for one way or another, and just kind of showing them the ropes of where the pitfalls are and what to watch out for as you run the gauntlet of small business in general. And I think that there's just not a lot of that, as Carla kind of mentioned previously, as far as there's just, Milwaukee being more of an industrial town, that an entrepreneurial mindset really is not something that is as strong as it could be and as it should be. So those are 3 things I think would help out quite a bit.
Great. Carla.
I think some of the larger businesses really need to set supplier diversity goals, purchasing goals, as opposed to saying that, you know, it's something we want to do, but you don't have any specific goals, because if it's not a numerical goal, you can't measure it. So how do you measure success? And if that happens, then you can really see the growth that can happen with diverse businesses. Because if it's a goal, companies or the purchase agents will go out and find someone, and they won't use the excuse of, well, there's nobody there. They'll figure out a way. Their clients, their current vendors will find a firm to team with and mentor to help them grow. So I think that that's one of the ways to really make a difference within the region. So the companies really have to be proactive in making the goal happen. I mean, one of my clients, Freighter in a medical college, set a goal for diverse businesses on projects. They're in the process now of increasing that goal because they've been successful in meeting it. And then also trying to find ways to have diverse businesses and architectural firms to have master service agreements, as you know, so they can do projects themselves. So even just going through that process, it doesn't happen overnight, it happens over time. But if you don't really set the goal of saying, I want to do this, it will never happen. So I think that has been one of the, problems in Milwaukee. Some of the major corporations has goals, but mid-size and other firms have not necessarily sort of set any types of goals to diversify their vendors and people who are supplying to them. So I think that would really make a difference.
Great, thank you. So as we wrap up here, I'm looking for kind of a 60-second response from each of you. And just, you know, if you look forward, what's the one thing you think Milwaukee could do to help improve the environment for business owners and business founders like yourselves? And so maybe Ugo, I'll start with you, and then James, and then close with Carla.
Definitely, and I'll start with piggybacking off the obviously the importance of supplier diversity programs. We're very fortunate in Milwaukee that we do have some large corporations that have some globally leading supplier diversity programs, and I'll say that even if you're a small or a large organization, having that, as Carla mentioned, it starts from the top, and also a step further is having that supplier diversity program be part of your performance review. So if the CEO is monitoring his performance based upon their supplier diversity program, things change. And, have that annual review as being part of the performance metrics. And then also, kind of looking at the bigger picture is that supplier diversity, it improves the economy, improves the community. When you look at, it's actually a good business decision. When you look at major corporations, they say that for every $1 million in procurement costs for supplier diversity program, 3.6 million falls to the bottom line. So it's a good business case for it, in addition to all the things that it does for the community. Last but not least, with us obviously being on the MMAC webinar here, I have to put MMAC on, what can MMAC do? How can MMAC, when I say MMAC, I'm talking about ourselves also, part of the board. What can we do? And I think, when you're looking at corporation engagement, how are we able to motivate our corporate members to engage, whether it's the supplier diversity module, which we're getting back up and running, ethnically diverse business coalition, but how do we get our corporate members to engage in supplier diversity? And then also looking at some of the things that we do great. We look at M7, which has done amazing things. When they're looking at bringing Foxconn and Haribo and the Water Council and all these things that they're doing, I think are phenomenal. Let's look at some industry-based regional development. And what do I mean by that? When all the inertia that it takes to get these big developments going, whether you have the entertainment district for the Bucks, it would be great when these things, whether it's Foxconn or the Bucks district, to also say, what are some established diverse-owned businesses that are in that industry that could also benefit for some type of long-term investment opportunities. And I think if we did that, so that every year when we're celebrating all the major corporations that M7 was very successful in bringing, which is great, we definitely need the major businesses coming, but I think we're missing it because we look at it at two separate discussions. And that conversation, I think we should also be focusing on how many, every year M7 and MMAC should be looking at how many diverse businesses grew and expanded as a result of MMAC or M7 efforts.
Thank you.
My 2
James?
cents.
I would say that, as we all know about the issues that Milwaukee has as far as, disparity goes relative to people of color, I think we didn't get here overnight. And I think that what needs to happen in order to get things more equitable, it's going to be a little bit more of an overcompensation in order to get there. So I think that there are programs that are needed to address the disparities. So being intentional and overcompensating to accelerate the equalizing of that playing field. I think that involves, actually being transparent about where diversity numbers are. The kind of, to the point that was made earlier about, you can measure based on KPIs as opposed to just quote unquote a commitment, for lack of a better word. But then also just kind of like looking at contracts that are awarded locally and the ownership and taking those into consideration. Those were, I think, go a long way to see like real results within a couple, a year, if not a few, before you start seeing real measurable results, an uptick where we'd be moving in the right direction as far as those KPIs that no one likes to really look at.
Yeah. Carla, we'll give you the last short word, and then we're going to bring Dr. Raymond in here.
Okay, I think Ugo and James pretty much summed up everything about what we really can do. I think Wisconsin as a whole has had, and especially Milwaukee, the number of people of color that have been incarcerated, which means they have not, so these are additional Black eyes that they have in trying to solve or grow a business. I think whatever we can do to minimize that and find alternatives so people have an opportunity, I think that goes a long way too in making sure that this becomes a region that people really can see themselves being successful in and not just as a detriment for Blacks, because we really have to change the number of people we incarcerate, the number of businesses, which means that has an impact on the number of Black businesses that can grow because it has an impact on you being able to get capital and other things. So, but as James said, I think we do need to find ways to overcompensate for some of the problems or some of the detriments that's been done over the years. And I think we can really see some growth that can happen within the community. And then the other thing is people really have to believe. You have to believe that you can be successful. You have to dream. And as a region, we need to change that concept so people can start believing that people of color can believe that it's possible within this region.
Well, Carla, Ugo, James, thank you very much for sharing your time. Thank you for your willingness to serve on the MMAC board, and thanks for the opportunity to learn from you. So appreciate everything.
Thank you. Thank you, Tim. Thank you, Carla. Thank you, James.
Thank you all. Thank you, Ugo. Thank you, Carla. Thank you, Tim.